In the remote mountains of North Carolina, where Cherokee traditions still whispered through ancient forests, a dying woman made an impossible request that would challenge everything a frontier family believed about the natural world. Her final words spoke of a baby whose destiny was already written in the stars, a child who possessed knowledge that defied every law of human development. The infant she pressed into trembling hands was no ordinary child. While other babies cried wordlessly, this one spoke names of people he had never met, places he had never seen, events that had not yet occurred. What seemed like innocent babbling revealed itself as something far more profound and terrifying to those who dared to listen. This is the incredible true story of a Cherokee prophecy fulfilled, of a child whose spiritual gifts bridged two worlds, and of the family who raised him despite not understanding the magnitude of what they had been entrusted to protect. Some gifts cannot be explained, only witnessed and honored. If you believe that some children come into this world carrying ancient wisdom, hit that like button right now. Subscribe and ring the notification bell, because stories like this prove that the spiritual realm touches our world in ways we can barely comprehend. Drop a comment about your thoughts on unexplained childhood gifts. I read every single one and would love to hear your experiences. The year was 1838, and the mountains of western North Carolina echoed with the sound of soldiers' boots and wagon wheels as the Cherokee removal reached its devastating climax. Samuel and Martha Henley operated a small trading post near the Tennessee border, serving both white settlers and the few Cherokee families who had managed to avoid the forced march westward. On a bitter cold February morning, Martha heard desperate knocking at their cabin door. She opened it to find a Cherokee woman collapsed on their porch, clutching a bundle against her chest with the last of her strength. Blood stained the woman's buckskin dress, and her breathing came in shallow, rattling gasps. "Please," the woman whispered in broken English, her dark eyes filled with urgent desperation. "Take baby, promise me. He's special child, very special." She pressed the bundle into Martha's arms with trembling hands, her grip surprisingly strong for someone so close to death, as if this final act required every ounce of her remaining life force. Martha unwrapped the deerskin blanket to reveal an infant who couldn't have been more than 6 months old. The baby had striking features, dark hair, deep brown eyes, and skin that spoke of his Cherokee heritage. But there was something else about the child, an alertness and awareness that seemed unusual for one so young. "What's his name?" Martha asked gently, but the Cherokee woman's breathing had grown even more labored. She struggled to speak, each word requiring tremendous effort as life slipped away from her weakening body. "He tell you," she managed to gasp. "He tell you his name. He already know everything, everything that was, everything that will be." Before Martha could ask what she meant, the woman's eyes fluttered closed. "His people gone," she whispered with her dying breath. "But he stay. He have work here. Promise me you keep him safe until spirits call." With those final words, the Cherokee woman passed away, leaving Martha holding an infant whose destiny she couldn't begin to understand. Samuel appeared at the door just as the woman breathed her last. He knelt beside the body with respect, recognizing the traditional Cherokee beadwork on her clothing and the sacred symbols painted on her hands. "She was someone important," he murmured. "A medicine woman, maybe. Look at those markings. They're not ordinary decorations." The baby remained unusually quiet during this exchange, his dark eyes moving between Martha and Samuel as if he understood every word they spoke. Most infants his age would have been crying from cold or hunger, but this child seemed content to observe, his gaze intelligent and somehow ancient beyond his months. Martha brought the baby inside while Samuel prepared the Cherokee woman's body for burial according to the customs he'd learned during years of trading with tribal members. The infant allowed himself to be fed and changed without fuss. but his alert attention to everything around him continued to unsettle Martha in ways she couldn't explain. That evening, as Martha rocked the baby by the firelight, something extraordinary happened. The child looked directly at her and spoke a single clear word: Wado. Martha gasped, recognizing the Cherokee word for thank you. No 6-month-old baby should have been capable of such clear speech, yet the child had spoken with perfect pronunciation. "Samuel!" Martha called to her husband, who was cleaning his rifle across the room. "You need to hear this. The baby just spoke, and it wasn't baby talk. He said a Cherokee word clear as day." Samuel approached skeptically, but the infant looked at him and repeated the word, adding another, "Osio," which meant hello. Over the following days, the baby's vocabulary expanded at an impossible rate. He seemed to understand both English and Cherokee, responding appropriately to questions and commands in either language. More disturbing still, he began speaking names. Names of people the Henleys had never mentioned in his presence, and some they had never heard at all. Where did he learn these names? Martha wondered aloud, as the baby pointed toward the mountains and clearly said, "Dragging Canoe," the name of a famous Cherokee war leader who had died decades before the child was born. The infant spoke as if he personally knew these historical figures, describing them with an intimacy that defied explanation. The most unsettling moment came when the baby looked directly at Samuel and said, "Grandfather Samuel, take care of little bird until eagle time comes." The child had never heard Samuel called grandfather by anyone, and the metaphor about birds seemed far too sophisticated for an infant to conceive, let alone articulate with such clarity. Word of the unusual baby began to spread among the few remaining Cherokee families in the area. An elderly medicine man named Diving Bear traveled 3 days to see the child, bringing with him knowledge of tribal prophecies that might explain the infant's extraordinary abilities. His examination would reveal connections to Cherokee spiritual traditions that went back generations. Diving Bear spent hours observing the baby, speaking to him in Cherokee and watching his responses with growing amazement. The infant not only understood complex spiritual concepts, but seemed to remember events from Cherokee history as if he had witnessed them personally. "This child carries the souls of our ancestors," Diving Bear finally declared. "He is the bridge between the world of spirits and the world of men." The medicine man explained that Cherokee prophecy spoke of a special child who would be born during the time of great suffering, carrying the wisdom of all who had come before. This child would serve as a guardian of Cherokee knowledge and traditions, preserving them even when the people themselves were scattered to distant lands. "The mother who brought him to you was called Morning Star," Diving Bear revealed. "She was the last of the old medicine women, keeper of our most sacred knowledge. She died knowing that her life's work would continue through this child who carries everything she taught him before he was even born into this world." Martha felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a heavy blanket. She had agreed to care for an orphaned infant, but she had actually accepted guardianship of something far more significant, a living repository of an entire culture's spiritual wisdom and historical memory, entrusted to her by forces beyond her understanding. The baby looked up at Martha from his makeshift cradle, his dark eyes seeming to hold depths of knowledge that no infant should possess. In a clear, steady voice, he spoke his first complete sentence: "Martha, mother now, Samuel, father now, little bird safe until eagle time." The words chilled Martha to the bone, not because they were threatening, but because they carried the weight of destiny spoken by someone who already knew exactly how the future would unfold. As weeks turned to months, the Cherokee infant whom Martha and Samuel had named Joseph, though he often corrected them with names he preferred in Cherokee, continued to display abilities that defied natural explanation. His physical development proceeded normally, but his intellectual and spiritual awareness seemed to operate on a completely different timeline than other children. By his first birthday, Joseph was speaking in complete sentences in both English and Cherokee, often switching between languages mid-conversation, as if certain concepts could only be properly expressed in one or the other. He demonstrated knowledge of Cherokee ceremonies, songs, and stories that no one had taught him, reciting them with the accuracy of an elder who had spent decades learning tribal traditions. The most unsettling aspect of Joseph's development was his apparent ability to see and interact with people who weren't visible to anyone else. Martha would often find him having animated conversations with empty corners of the cabin, speaking Cherokee in respectful tones as if addressing honored elders. When questioned, he would explain that he was talking to the old ones who came before. Samuel, initially skeptical of the child's unusual abilities, became a believer when Joseph correctly predicted the arrival of travelers 3 days before they appeared at the trading post. The boy had described not only when they would come, but also what they would be wearing, what they would want to trade, and personal details about their families that proved accurate in every detail. "How does he know these things?" Samuel asked Diving Bear during one of the medicine man's regular visits to check on Joseph's development. The elderly Cherokee studied the child with a mixture of reverence and concern, recognizing abilities that went beyond even the most gifted medicine people of his experience. "The spirits have chosen him as their voice in this world," Diving Bear explained. "He sees what was, what is, and what will be, because time moves differently for those who carry such gifts. But this knowledge comes with great responsibility and great danger. There are those who would use such a child for their own purposes, and others who would destroy him out of fear." As Joseph grew into his second year, his predictions became more frequent and more specific. He warned Samuel about a severe winter storm 2 weeks before it struck, allowing the family to prepare adequate supplies. He told Martha about the birth of her sister's baby in Tennessee before any messenger could have brought the news across the mountains. The child's connection to Cherokee culture remained strong despite his isolation from his people. He would often sit by the fire in the evenings, telling Martha and Samuel stories about Cherokee ancestors, describing battles, migrations, and ceremonies with vivid detail that suggested personal memory rather than learned knowledge. His stories always carried moral lessons about courage, wisdom, and respect for the natural world. Joseph's unusual abilities attracted attention from unexpected sources. Word reached government officials about the Cherokee child with supernatural gifts, and some began to view him as either a valuable asset or a potential threat. Samuel received subtle inquiries from territorial authorities about the boy's whereabouts and abilities, questions that made him increasingly protective of his adopted son. The family's isolation in the mountains provided some protection from unwanted attention, but Joseph himself seemed aware of the dangers surrounding him. At age 3, he began speaking about the time of hiding and the time of revealing, suggesting that he understood the need to conceal his gifts until some future moment when they would be needed. Martha noticed that Joseph's abilities seemed to strengthen during certain seasons and phases of the moon, following patterns that Diving Bear recognized as connected to Cherokee spiritual calendars. During these peak periods, the child would enter trance-like states, speaking in ancient Cherokee dialects and describing visions of events both historical and prophetic. The most remarkable demonstration of Joseph's gifts occurred during his 4th year, when a group of lost Cherokee refugees stumbled upon the Henley trading post while fleeing government forces. Joseph immediately recognized their clan affiliations, spoke their specific dialect, and provided information about safe routes through the mountains that proved accurate, despite his never having traveled those paths. "He knows the old ways better than many of our own elders," one of the refugees marveled. "This child carries the soul of our greatest medicine men. The spirits have preserved our knowledge in his young body until the time comes for our people to reclaim what was taken from us." Joseph's interaction with these Cherokee visitors revealed another aspect of his unusual nature: his ability to provide comfort and guidance to those in spiritual distress. He performed healing ceremonies with techniques no child should have known, speaking sacred words that brought peace to troubled minds and strength to weary bodies. As the refugees prepared to continue their journey westward, Joseph made a prophecy that would haunt Martha for years to come. "The scattered people will return to these mountains," he said with the solemnity of an ancient oracle. "When the great wheel completes its turning, the Cherokee will walk these paths again, and the child who preserved their memories will be a man ready to guide them home." The weight of raising such an extraordinary child began to take its toll on Martha and Samuel. They loved Joseph deeply, but struggled with the responsibility of nurturing abilities they couldn't understand and protecting secrets that could endanger them all. Every day brought new evidence of the boy's supernatural gifts and new reminders of the precarious position they occupied as his guardians. Joseph seemed to sense his adoptive parents' concerns and often tried to comfort them with reassurances about their shared future. "Martha and Samuel chosen by spirits," he would say, "safe until eagle time comes. Then Joseph fly with ancestors, but love stays always." His words provided some comfort, though they also served as reminders that his time with them was part of a larger plan beyond their control. The child's ability to bridge the spiritual and physical worlds became more pronounced as he entered his 5th year. He could predict weather patterns months in advance, locate lost objects by consulting with invisible guides, and provide warnings about dangers that threatened the family's safety. His gifts made daily life both easier and more complicated, as Martha and Samuel learned to rely on supernatural guidance while fearing its implications. Diving bears' visits became more frequent as Joseph approached what the medicine man called the age of understanding, the time when the child would begin to comprehend the full scope of his spiritual mission. "Soon he will know why the spirits chose him," Diving Bear explained. "The knowledge will change him, make him both more and less than an ordinary boy. You must be prepared for what he will become." As Joseph's 6th birthday approached, Martha noticed changes in his behavior that suggested the medicine man's predictions were coming true. The child spent longer periods in meditation, communicated more frequently with his invisible Cherokee advisors, and began speaking about future events with greater urgency and detail. The carefree aspects of his childhood were giving way to the weight of spiritual responsibility. The transformation culminated on a spring morning when Joseph woke from a particularly vivid dream and announced, "The eagle time is coming soon. Joseph must be ready to teach the world what the Cherokee people knew. The old ways and new ways will meet in this child, and from that meeting will come healing for all people." Joseph's 6th year marked the beginning of what Diving Bear called the Great Awakening, a period when the child's supernatural abilities would fully manifest and his spiritual mission would become clear. The transformation was both gradual and dramatic, as the boy who had been unusually gifted became something approaching a living oracle of Cherokee wisdom and prophecy. The change first became apparent in Joseph's relationship with the natural world around the family's mountain home. Animals that had previously avoided human contact began seeking him out, gathering around the cabin as if drawn by some invisible force. Wild deer would graze peacefully in the yard while Joseph sat among them, speaking softly in Cherokee and apparently receiving communications that no one else could detect. Martha watched in amazement as her adopted son demonstrated an intuitive understanding of herbal medicine that surpassed even Diving Bear's extensive knowledge. Joseph would venture into the forest and return with specific plants for treating ailments that hadn't yet manifested, preparing remedies according to formulas he claimed to receive from the plant spirits who taught the first medicine people. The boy's predictions became more complex and far-reaching, encompassing events that would affect not just the local community, but the entire region. He spoke of a great war coming between the northern and southern states, describing battles and outcomes with details that wouldn't be verified until decades later. His visions extended beyond Cherokee concerns to include the fate of all peoples living in the changing American landscape. Samuel documented many of Joseph's prophecies in a leather-bound journal, initially skeptical but gradually convinced by the accuracy of the child's predictions. "If someone reads this years from now," Samuel wrote, "they'll think we've lost our minds. But I've seen this boy describe events before they happen, name people before he meets them, and demonstrate knowledge that no human child should possess." The most significant change in Joseph's development was his growing awareness of his role as a cultural bridge between Cherokee traditions and the modern world. He began speaking about the time of teaching, when he would share Cherokee wisdom with people of all backgrounds, preserving ancient knowledge while adapting it to changing circumstances. Diving. Bear recognized the signs of Joseph's spiritual maturation and began preparing him for ceremonies that would formally acknowledge his role as a keeper of Cherokee cultural memory. "The boy carries the voices of our ancestors," the medicine man explained to Martha and Samuel. "Soon he must learn to use this gift not just for seeing, but for healing the wounds that divide all peoples." Joseph's abilities attracted attention from unexpected sources as word of his gift spread through networks of traders, settlers, and travelers who passed through the mountain region. Some came seeking guidance, others hoping to witness supernatural phenomena, and a few with darker intentions related to exploiting or controlling someone with prophetic abilities. The family's remote location provided some protection, but Joseph himself seemed to anticipate when visitors posed genuine threats. He would warn Samuel and Martha about dangerous individuals days before they arrived, allowing the family to prepare defenses or simply disappear into the mountains until the danger passed. His protective instincts extended to the broader community, as he often provided warnings about natural disasters or hostile actions. As Joseph entered his 7th year, his communications with the spirit world became more frequent and more complex. He would spend hours in apparent conversation with invisible Cherokee elders, receiving instructions about ceremonial procedures, historical accounts, and spiritual teachings that he then shared with Diving Bear for verification. The accuracy of his spiritual communications astonished even the experienced medicine man. The child's most remarkable demonstration of his gifts occurred during a severe drought that threatened the survival of both white settlements and Cherokee families remaining in the region. Joseph entered a trance state that lasted 3 days, during which he communicated with what he called the rain spirits and negotiated for relief from the devastating dry conditions. On the 3rd night of Joseph's spiritual journey, clouds began gathering over the mountains despite clear weather forecasts. Rain fell steadily for 2 days, breaking the drought and saving crops throughout the region. Joseph emerged from his trance weakened but satisfied, explaining that the spirits heard the prayers of all people, not just Cherokee, because suffering knows no boundaries between different kinds of humans. The rain ceremony marked a point in how the local community viewed Joseph and his adoptive family. Word spread that the Cherokee boy had ended the drought through spiritual intervention, and people began approaching the Henley cabin seeking help with various problems. Joseph welcomed these visitors regardless of their background, offering guidance based on his supernatural insights. Martha and Samuel found themselves serving as intermediaries between Joseph and the growing number of people who sought his counsel. The child displayed wisdom far beyond his years when dealing with adult problems, offering solutions that drew on both Cherokee spiritual traditions and practical understanding of human nature. His advice proved consistently helpful, further enhancing his reputation as someone with genuine prophetic gifts. The attention also brought increased scrutiny from government officials who viewed Joseph's influence as potentially problematic. Reports reached territorial authorities about a Cherokee child who commanded significant respect among both white and Native American populations, raising concerns about possible resistance activities or unauthorized spiritual leadership that might challenge official policies. Samuel received visits from federal agents who questioned him about Joseph's activities and the people who came seeking the boy's guidance. While these investigations remained officially friendly, the underlying threat was clear. Joseph's growing influence made him a person of interest too. Authorities who preferred that Cherokee cultural activities remained suppressed rather than celebrated. Joseph seemed aware of the governmental attention and began speaking about the time of choosing, when he would have to decide whether to continue his public spiritual work or retreat into hiding to protect both himself and his adoptive family. The weight of this decision pressed heavily on a child who carried adult responsibilities while still needing the love and protection that Martha and Samuel provided. Diving Bear counseled patience and careful planning as Joseph's 8th birthday approached. "The spirits will guide us to the right path," the medicine man assured Martha. This child was not given such gifts only to hide them away. But wisdom requires knowing when to speak and when to remain silent, when to act and when to wait for the proper moment. The medicine man's words proved prophetic when Joseph announced that he had received instructions from his Cherokee ancestors about the next phase of his spiritual mission. "The old ones say it's time to leave the mountain," Joseph told his adoptive parents. "There are people in the valley who need to hear Cherokee wisdom, but they will only listen if it comes through someone who bridges both worlds." Martha's heart broke at the thought of Joseph leaving their protective mountain home, but she recognized that his destiny extended far beyond their family's care. "Where will you go?" she asked, though she suspected the child already knew exactly what path he would follow and what challenges lay ahead for someone carrying such extraordinary spiritual gifts. Joseph looked toward the valley below their mountain home with eyes that seemed to see far beyond the physical landscape. "Joseph goes where the spirits send him," the child replied, "but the love of Martha and Samuel comes too. Family made by spirit choice never breaks, even when bodies walk different paths through the world." Joseph's 8th birthday arrived with omens that even Martha and Samuel could not ignore. Eagles circled their mountain cabin for 3 consecutive days, their cries echoing across the valley in patterns that Diving Bear recognized as ancient Cherokee signals of spiritual transition. The time had come for the child to begin the next phase of his extraordinary mission. On the morning of his birthday, Joseph woke speaking perfect English without any trace of the Cherokee accent that had characterized his speech since infancy. When Martha commented on the change, he explained that the spirit voices say it's time to speak the language of the people who need to hear Cherokee wisdom most. The old words will remain, but new words must carry them to places they've never been. The transformation in Joseph's manner of speaking was accompanied by other changes that signaled his evolution from gifted child to spiritual teacher. His conversations with invisible Cherokee advisors became less frequent but more focused. As if he was receiving final instructions for the work ahead, he spent hours in meditation, emerging with detailed knowledge about places he had never visited and people he had never met. Word arrived through trading networks that a Methodist minister in the town of Asheville had been asking questions about the Cherokee boy with supernatural gifts. Reverend Thomas Caldwell had heard stories about Joseph's healing abilities and prophecies, and he wanted to determine whether the child represented divine inspiration or demonic influence. His inquiry marked the beginning of Joseph's entry into the broader world beyond the mountain sanctuary. Diving Bear spent Joseph's birthday evening performing ceremonies that would spiritually prepare the boy for his departure from Cherokee protection. "You carry our people's soul in your heart," the medicine man told Joseph during the ritual. "Whether you walk among Cherokee or among white people, you remain the bridge between our world and theirs. Never forget that your greatest power comes from honoring both sides of who you are." Martha and Samuel prepared for Joseph's departure with heavy hearts, but clear understanding that they could not keep him from his destiny. The child had given them 8 years of extraordinary experiences and profound love, transforming their lives in ways they could never have imagined when they first took him in. Now they had to trust that the spiritual forces guiding him would continue to provide protection. Joseph's farewell to his adoptive parents was both heartbreaking and inspiring. Martha and Samuel gave Joseph human love when spirits provided only purpose, he said, embracing them with the fierce affection of a child combined with the gratitude of someone who understood exactly what had been sacrificed for his sake. This love becomes part of Cherokee wisdom that Joseph carries to the world. The journey to Asheville marked Joseph's first extended venture beyond the mountain territory that had sheltered his childhood. Accompanied by Samuel for protection and guidance, the boy demonstrated remarkable adaptability to new environments while maintaining his connection to the spiritual forces that had shaped his development. His behavior during the trip revealed someone comfortable moving between different cultural contexts. Reverend Caldwell's first meeting with Joseph challenged every preconception the minister had formed about the Cherokee child. Instead of the primitive savage or demonic influence he had expected, Caldwell encountered an articulate, intelligent boy who spoke about spiritual matters with depth and sophistication that rivaled seminary-trained theologians. Joseph's knowledge of Christian theology, despite minimal exposure to it, astonished the educated minister. This child understands divine truth in ways that transcend denominational boundaries, Reverend Caldwell wrote to his bishop after several conversations with Joseph. He speaks of the Creator using Cherokee concepts that illuminate Christian mysteries I've struggled to comprehend for decades. If this is not divine inspiration, then I no longer understand what inspiration means. Joseph's stay in Asheville opened new chapters in his spiritual development as he encountered people from backgrounds completely different from his mountain upbringing. He ministered to grieving families, provided guidance to troubled souls, and demonstrated healing abilities that drew comparisons to biblical miracles. His reputation spread rapidly through the growing town and surrounding communities. The child's ability to bridge cultural and religious divides became apparent as he worked with Reverend Caldwell to develop what they called universal spiritual principles, teachings that honored both Cherokee wisdom and Christian faith, while speaking to truths that transcended specific religious traditions. Their collaboration attracted attention from religious leaders throughout the region who were curious about this unprecedented theological partnership. Joseph's work in Asheville also attracted opposition from those who viewed his influence as threatening to established religious and social order. Some critics denounced him as a false prophet, while others questioned the wisdom of allowing a Cherokee child to teach white congregations. The boy handled these challenges with grace and wisdom that impressed even his harshest critics, responding to hostility with compassion and understanding. The most significant test of Joseph's mission came when a group of Cherokee refugees, survivors of the Trail of Tears, arrived in North Carolina seeking connection to their homeland. They had heard stories about the Cherokee child who preserved their people's spiritual traditions and wanted to determine whether these accounts were true. Their arrival created an opportunity for Joseph to serve his original people while continuing his work among white communities. Joseph's reunion with Cherokee survivors was deeply emotional for everyone involved. The refugees recognized in this young boy the preservation of cultural knowledge they had feared was lost forever. He conducted traditional ceremonies, recited ancient stories, and provided spiritual healing for people traumatized by forced removal from their homeland. His work validated their cultural identity while offering hope for the future. The success of Joseph's ministry to both Cherokee and white communities established him as a unique figure in the region's spiritual landscape. By age 10, he was regularly invited to speak at churches, tribal gatherings, and community events throughout western North Carolina. His message of universal spiritual truths resonated with people seeking meaning in a rapidly changing world. Martha and Samuel visited Joseph regularly, marveling at the confident young teacher their adopted son had become, while treasuring moments when he still seemed like the extraordinary child they had raised. Their relationship remained strong, despite the physical distance, bound by love and shared understanding of the miraculous journey they had experienced together. Joseph's teenage years brought new challenges and opportunities as his reputation spread beyond regional boundaries. Religious leaders from distant states sought his counsel, scholars studied his teachings, and government officials monitored his activities with mixture of curiosity and concern. Through it all, he remained grounded in the Cherokee wisdom that had shaped his early development. The child who had been entrusted to Martha and Samuel by a dying Cherokee woman had fulfilled the prophecy spoken at his birth. He had become the bridge between worlds, preserving ancient wisdom while adapting it to serve people of all backgrounds. His name, spoken by spirits before his birth, had indeed become known throughout the land as a source of healing and hope. As Joseph entered adulthood, he often reflected on the dying words of the Cherokee woman who had saved his life. "He tell you his name. He already know everything." The prophecy had proven true in ways that even she might not have fully comprehended. The baby who had spoken his destiny had grown into the man who would fulfill it, carrying the voices of his ancestors into a future where their wisdom was desperately needed.